You're listening to Not So Live from Asteroid G. Totally not the guy who's killing teens in... I'm not even sure what is the name of the town in Scream. Do you remember?
Woodsboro.
Woodsboro, thank you. I wanted to say Haddonfield, and that's Halloween. That's a completely wrong one, but it was in my head, so, I wasn't letting it go at that point. I'm your host, Mike Finkelstein. With me in the booth, as always, is...
your other friend, Mike. We're doing this again because twice is nice.
Yeah, full disclosure, we recorded this once, and then OBS ate the audio from half of the whole transfer, so you would have heard my lovely voice and no one else's, and, well, I would appreciate that. It doesn't make for a great podcast. So
Mike was having a really good conversation with Mike, literally himself.
There are two mics in the booth, and both of them this time were me. So...
Oh, boy.
Wow. So this week, we are going to be discussing the Scream killers. You had the idea during the last Scream podcast that we wanted to discuss what the killers were and how good they were, because specifically, while some of the movies are good, some of the killers are bad, and vice versa. A key one that we will touch upon being the fact that I dislike Scream 4, but you make a compelling argument about how at least one of the killers in that movie is actually pretty decent.
Yeah, we'll get there. And that's the great thing about this franchise. Not only can you critique the movie itself and its quality and whatnot, you can critique the killer inside the movie, which you can't really say for every slasher film because it's a lot of the same slasher. This is the same, idea in Ghostface, but it's not the same killer.
Yeah, it works perfectly because, the movies live or die on Freddy or Jason or whatever, but when Ghostface is different every time around, sometimes twice over, then it's really more about, how compelling the movie is and how compelling the characters are separately.
Exactly, yes.
So, if we're going to go through this, we want to do them in order of worst to best. And there are a few different ones. We're going to get the easiest one out of the way right now, which is from the Scream 6 prologue. Poor body Greg, who does nothing and just dies. He's the worst of the Scream killers because he doesn't even get to do anything.
I mean, the best he got was a death that we didn't even see. It was off screen. Apparently he was an accomplice, but I mean, the real killer in the beginning of that prologue that did the heavy lifting, who we both really enjoy.
Yes.
We'll talk about later. He was obviously not a real part of the movie.
The one thing I want to say, and I kind of appreciate this about Scream 6 and many of the Screams in general, is that they're movies built around the final girls, that whole slasher movie trope about the heroines being the only ones that get to survive and yada, yada, yada. And the interesting thing about Greg, the Ghostface killer who dies before we even get to see him, is that he gets fridged. He literally get the trope that is usually done to females in superhero stories to motivate the men, which is still something Marvel is doing even today. Happens to Greg, a dude in a movie where the females are heroes. Now, it's not to motivate any of the female heroes, but it's still interesting to note he got fridged.
Yeah, it put him on ice, I guess you'd say, because he wasn't even worth watching, I guess.
Right? No. That's the trope from Green Lantern when the girlfriend who gets fridged to motivate Kyle Rayner to become the best Green Lantern he can. She dies off screen and he only discovers her. And it's like, but what about my eggs I had in there? Come on.
I was making a midnight snack and now I got to get this forearm out of the way.
I had half a carton of milk in there and the villain puts a girlfriend in here instead, Oh,
just terrible. No consideration for food safety and rotation of product.
And now that we're done being awful, let's actually move on to the real terrible killers. And I want to start with the one that I feel like has the most buildup around them, but ends up accomplishing very little as far as her character is concerned, and that would be Nancy Loomis. I feel like she's not a great killer because she comes out of nowhere. As a character in the movie, she's interesting. She's this reporter who's kind of like an up-and-coming trying to chase after Gale and prove herself on the local scene and whatever. And then she reveals herself being Nancy Loomis, and it comes out of nowhere, and everything that was interesting about her character goes out the window.
It's weird, too, because I feel like at the end with the reveal, Sydney recognized her almost instantly. And I don't understand how, you go this whole period of movie where, she's there, who she is, and no one put two and two together. I mean, I'll have to watch it back again. I guess Sid never saw her.
Right.
But, I mean, the reveal itself was oh, okay, I guess we're doing a whole Friday the 13th reboot kind of thing, I suppose. And
then it amounts to nothing.
Yeah. Or, The one thing she has going for her is she killed one of the legacy characters,
Mm-hmm.
in Randy, and that's
Randy.
about it.
That's about it.
Yeah, that's why to me she makes the list at all. It's her only confirmed kill in the movie, and she is, I guess, the mastermind. But I mean,
Eh.
weak is putting it nicely.
It also says very terrible things about Gail. That she's a
Mhm.
reporter who, like, literally wrote the book on Billy and Stu, and she didn't even think to look up a picture of Billy's mom.
Yeah,
Girl.
Gail needs a little bit better investigative reporting next time because
Right?
I mean, Sid got it right away, and Gail didn't even see it coming.
Sid didn't even take a second. She's like, oh, yeah, I know what that bitch is. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. Very good choice for worst. I agree.
Because it's just bad. Following that is, and I'm sorry to Rory Culkin, who's part of the Culkin family, and that's actually a pretty good actor, but Charlie Walker from movie 4. Like, that movie's
Mhm.
all about Emma Roberts, and he's just kind of there.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this a little bit. Like, I mean, it's a weak, motive. He did it for love, I guess. Like, don't you realize your girlfriend is a complete and total psychopath? Like,
Right.
she doubled your kill count in the movie for one, and for two, like, she basically just used you, and you just never saw it coming.
Yeah. No, he's an
I mean,
idiot.
yeah, he's a total moron.
He's an
I mean, he had a very brutal kill in killing the friend across, the way while they were watching from the window. So I give him a little bit more credit than my second worst killer, who we'll touch on next. But I mean, I feel you. He's very much down at the bottom. It was no surprise to see him go. I guess the shock value was there that she did stab him, but I mean, he wasn't making it out, and he got a really poor death for a Ghostface, in my opinion, as well.
And it's not that shocking because the killer always turns on the other killer in these movies. Billy turned on Stu. Like, no. So your next bottom is
Ethan from Scream 6.
Yes. I agree with this.
I would put Charlie slightly above Ethan. They're both quite bad, just because Ethan, he doesn't do much. He keeps trying to play like, he's almost like the red herring of the movie. I was at macro class. I wasn't around. I was at this taking, study hall. Like, he just has an excuse for everything.
It's contrived.
It's suspicious while trying to be non-suspicious. And
he's
the whole
so
time
bland
in the movie,
you suspect him.
Yeah, they're trying to play it off like he wasn't like, he wasn't a suspect, and everything he did, even when he tried to sound not suspicious, just made him look that much more, damned. And it reveal at the end, I was like, oh, I saw this coming, I guess. So this is fine.
Well, I mean, come on. He's on the train with one of the movie twins, and like he's there, and then suddenly it's Ghostface, and then suddenly he's back, and it's like, well, there's no way any other Ghostface could have been on that train. It's too narratively convenient. So he put on the mask and cloak. No one noticed him. He kills someone. He takes the mask and cloak off, and everyone's just like, it's New York.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, he's that much of a forgettable Ghostface that even if he did do that on the train, which I'm pretty sure that was his sister, who gets a one up on him there, no one even cared.
No one cares.
And yes, to your point, this is New York, but.
Yep.
At the same time, like, at least the Ghostface in the bodega made his presence felt.
He made a splash. Yeah, no, that is very true. I think we're both in agreement, though, that for the next one on the list, I was about to say number 3. That's the movie he's in. But for the next one on the list, it's Roman Bridger, who's to his credit, only Ghostface who did everything on his own, which is kind of hard to explain considering how many people die around him. But man, Roman Bridger is boring.
He's the blandest solo killer of all time. And, we'll give him his credit. I mean, I'm looking at the number here. He had 9 kills solo in the movie, and the only one to do it. There's always pairs except for Scream 3. But even at the reveal at the end when he's like, I'm your long lost brother, Sydney. She's looking at him like, I don't care who you are, and okay, really? Sure. Like,
it's like Arrested Development. Him?
Yeah.
Like
him? Yeah. So I get it. His reasons are fine, and I see him ranked higher on other lists because he, reveals that he was the reason to kind of set Stu and Billy on their path. By telling them what happened with the mother. He kind of he sits back and he's like, "I'm a director, Sydney. I direct." I'm like, "No, you're an idiot.
You're an idiot.
you're an idiot.
He has a compelling story, and if the movies had remained a trilogy, it kind of works well to tie everything back together. But even Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven couldn't leave it alone, and they made 4 with a plan for another trilogy. Like, the whole idea of him being the end cap because he's also the beginning of it, it only works if it's a trilogy, and without that, he's just a boring-ass character.
Yeah, we'll give him credit for being a solo killer, and the only one to get a little outside the box, with the arson kill and the explosion in the house and whatnot. But at the same time, even a character we're going to touch on pretty soon, who had such a minor role in the movie as a killer, I think was just better.
Yes. That's pretty much the bottom ranks. All the ones who barely make an impact or just don't work. We're into the middle chunk now. And whether you agree with the exact placement of this one or not, I kind of lean towards Amber Freeman-ness as the bottom of the middle. Like, she's from 5. She works well with Richie Kirsch. In with his story. Another one for love, but also, like, actually kind of in the craze of it as well. She's got the bloodlust. But she's forgettable.
She is. And I can float her around this little middle section between the bottom and the top, just based off of sheer crazy. A lot of the female killers in this franchise are just really, scary. Just scarier than the guys. And, she has, to this point, I would say, in the franchise, the most legendary kill of any legacy character, period, in Dewey. And,
yes.
I feel like that death in and of itself, could rank her anywhere from, 7 or 8 up to 4 or 5. I mean, depending on how you really want to go about it. This whole intersection is interchangeable for me. I'll agree with you here. She's in the middle. Where you want to put her is really up for debate. But I mean, she definitely is forgettable at times, but a little crazy and a little scary.
I think my problem with her is, like, when I go back and I think about the movie, which I've seen a couple times, I remember Richie. I barely remember Amber, and I think that's because she's more or less grafted onto his story, and it's not that she exists in her own way with all the characters.
I will say, I've said last time, I've been watching these back again because we've been talking a lot about it, and they're just good quality movies.
Yes, they are.
There's a lot of little scenes in there with the interaction between Amber and Richie, before the reveal, where you see her giving him these looks that you could just see, oh, I can connect the dots now. In the hospital, giving him a look like, you're an asshole, making me do this all on my own, and and another scene like, you're an asshole, pick up the pace here. She's crazy enough to have a head on her shoulders, but still, overall, Richie was the brains, and it kind of shows.
Yes. Quinn Bailey, one of the 3 Bailey killers from number 6. I would she's middle of the pack. I wouldn't put her higher. She's definitely performs better than her brother. The brother's boring. The sister's at least kind of crazy, and she gets to act it, especially once the reveal happens and you get to see the crazy. But it's interesting for her because she actually kind of forms with the friend unit, and you actually kind of like her before she's fake killed.
Yes.
So then when she's fake killed, she's freed up to go around and do a bunch of Ghostface killing. And I mentioned this to you off microphone. When you pay attention to the screams, all the various killers, at least in 5 and 6, you can sometimes see the height difference between them. And in this particular instance, there's the 2 Ghostfaces that attack Courtney Cox's Gail Weathers. And she, one of the 2 is taller than the other, so you can kind of basically guess, knowing where the dad is, that the 2 killers in the apartment are the brother and the sister because of the height difference. And I think that's interesting. You can actually track them, at least in that movie. And then you can kind of pick up where she is and who she's killing and how she's getting around with it and so forth. I like her better than her brother. Neither of them are great.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. She, for me, is someone I feel like we can put at the bottom of this middle tier. I would put Amber above her. I mean, good points of how she just integrated very well with the friend group. Tara and Sam both seem to trust her very much, which really shows that they definitely didn't see her coming. But at the same time, she I keep coming back to that movie with her and her brother stabbing the one twin repeatedly and
Oh
just not getting
yeah.
the job done. And maybe that's something more to the writing and the plot armor of this new core four here, where like, yo, we're gonna eviscerate you 27 times, and yet you're still gonna get out of here on a stretcher and be alive. It's just like,
That
or maybe they're just really weak stabbing. I'm not sure.
limp wristing it. Like no, it's it's
Yeah,
it's this thing of like, he had plot armor, and it's just not fair because that
yeah.
dude has been stabbed how many times in two movies?
I don't know.
230 or something. It's
It's
ridiculous. Like,
some crazy
yeah,
number.
he just cannot go without like down the street to a bodega without getting stabbed. Okay, this guy, and then he survives, and he's like, no, I got a chili dog. It's fine. I'll walk this off. No big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's fine. But like,
I mean, I guess he's got to get the girl at the end with Tara, but I mean,
it's
sure.
unnecessary. Let the bitch move on. She doesn't need you. I mean, at the very least, you can stand in front and take all the stabs for her. That's nice. Like, yeah.
Yeah, well, he certainly got a pretty good job of doing that.
And then at this point, we're kind of into a situation for me where we're starting to move into the top. There's only a couple middle tier killers. Like maybe you could put them higher, maybe you put them in the middle. I kind of feel like just because all three killers in this movie were in comparison to some of the really good ones, maybe the top of this middle section would be Detective Wayne Bailey, played by Dermot Mulroney.
Yeah, he was the most brutal of the killers in the
bodega killing.
The bodega. I mean, just sheer viciousness, and the way he kills a Ghostface we're going to talk about soon at the beginning of the movie as well.
I like so much better.
I like him better too, and he made a lot of good points with that. Like, we'll give him the credit of being, a Ghostface that is really just out there for blood, and the
motivated.
The parent rehash from the Nancy Loomis redo here, like I get it, but I don't know.
It's that thing we discussed before where, especially with 5 and 6, and it's 5's need to just basically redo the first movie, which is interesting in its own way because it does a better job of it than I think 4 did in trying to redo the first movie. We need to maybe not keep redoing the first movie, but that's besides the point. So number 5 really kind of was a redo of number 1 without being a rehash. It had its own thing to say, but by focusing on Sam, who's the daughter of Billy, and kind of reinventing the kills around them, even doing the same house again from the first movie where all the killing really happens near the end with the party. Like, that was interesting. And then by moving things to college and in a different town and away from where the Woodsboro killings happened again, they were mirroring number 2. So there's mirroring going on, and that comes down to Nancy Loomis being the killer of the second movie, and then the dad of the first killer, or Jack Quaid's killer from the 5th movie, then going for his own revenge. So yeah, parallels. And in that regard, and he's a better parallel, and it doesn't feel as much of a cheat here as it did with like Nancy Loomis, because like the Loomis family was so integral to Sydney's story that it's really weird no one recognizes her, as you point out. Like, it doesn't matter here for the Baileys as much. But
yeah.
So I give credit for that. And yeah, the bodega killing, that whole sequence, that has to be him. That was brutal.
It had to be. I don't see Quinn being able to pull that off with the shotgun.
Too short.
And certainly not Ethan. Not even close.
If the heights of the killer does matter, which I say it does because of the Courtney Cox sequence, then it couldn't have been her. And Ethan is just boring. It can't be him. He's a boring person.
Yes.
We'll
give him the credit he deserves. Yes, and we'll give. He certainly can't.
He certainly can't.
So Detective Bailey, he's in the middle tier. Definitely gets a +1 for brutality, but the motive is fine. It's a redo, but I mean, I guess I buy it a little more than Nancy Loomis. You are correct.
From there, and I kind of feel like placement, especially now, is going to be key. And I don't want to discount him because I feel like the performance was fantastic. And it's hard to follow up Billy and Stu, but as much as I love the actor, I kind of feel like Mickey Alateri, played by Timothy Olyphant from Justified, he's probably down near the bottom of this upper tier. His performance is great, his motivation works, he just wants to finish a movie and make it all about killing. That's cool, not a problem, I get it, that's fine. It actually mirrors a motivation for another killer we're going to touch on soon. But Scream 2 is not that great.
It's so funny because like and again, I've watched all these again recently.
Hmm.
He's not seen for about 45
Yeah,
minutes
yeah.
in the movie, and
He just
very,
disappears.
yeah,
Yeah.
just after the horrible, whatever you want to call, like, cafeteria scene with the acapella going
Oh my
on,
god, I hate that so much.
it was so bad. It's cringe,
Yes, it is. It
and
is.
after that, you don't see him again. He's almost forgotten.
Hmm.
So, dare I say, a Ghostface with the potential that was truly underused.
Hmm.
He was vicious. He had the motive that worked for him. He was going to make it happen. Betrayed by Nancy Loomis, who just didn't give a shit at all,
No.
obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think if we saw more of him, he could be higher. But
Hmm.
I agree.
Hmm.
Because of the lack of usage, just top tier, sure, but at the bottom.
At the bottom. At the bottom. And then I hate to put him down this far, but let's say it. What really happens? Scream 6 wastes the actual good killer in the first
Yep.
15 minutes. Has a fantastic introduction. Jason Carvey, played by Tony Revolori, who is, of course, in all our hearts, Flash Thompson.
Yes.
It's always going to be Flash Thompson.
Always
He's
Flash.
got a motivation that basically mirrors Mickey Alleteri. Again, that parallel that we're talking about there. He wants to make a good movie. A good horror movie, and he kills the teacher of their slasher movie class to prove his point. And then, the most important bit, he takes off his mask and reveals himself to you. And there's this
Yes.
whole thing where you could have been like, I can see this movie happening where he's like wandering around and hanging out with the people, and you can start tracking who he is and how he's killing, and there's potential there that we just don't get. And I loved the potential. I loved his performance. That's why he goes in the top tier, but he dies like a bitch 15 minutes in.
He does, but well, give him credit. His kill is truly vicious and
Oh god, yes.
very very cerebral too. Luring her
Hmm.
into the alley and on the phone with her for what felt like 5 minutes at the
Yeah.
beginning of the movie, just talking to her, just luring her away and away. And you, as the watcher and viewer, are knowing what she's walking into, and she's
Hmm.
just going for it. And he's very charismatic in getting her to go down a very dark alley in the middle of New York City with nobody else around. Like
Yeah.
he had tremendous potential for what he could have been, and sad we got to see him go so soon. But credit is due to somebody who had minimal screen time but maximum impact. Am I right?
Made a massive impression. And that's the important thing. Like, he could have been the top of this. He could have, like, actually surpassed Stu and Billy just with what the movie could have done with him and the angle it could have taken for him as a Ghostface. Whether or not Dead Body Greg came along with him for the ride. But he could have been top tier. Dead Body Greg could have been bottom tier. But the movie wastes it. And that's a flaw with number 6 I don't want to rehash, but we got to give him credit where it's due.
We do.
Yeah.
And I think, that's a great point. Like, what could it have been like in a movie where you know who the killer is 15 minutes in, and then you got to go through the whole movie, like knowing what you know and watching the interaction between him and the other characters. Like, it could have been quite interesting. And, I mean, I don't want to say we were robbed of it, like it was fine. It was written, but I feel slightly cheated. I'll say that.
Yeah. I watched the first 15 minutes and then I took a break because I had to get a snack while I was watching it the first time. And, I was just pumped. That was such an interesting way to start the movie, and then it wastes it. But, it was good. Okay, let's stop rehashing that. I feel like we've beaten that enough. I guess, of the top 4, number 4 then, and I think that's everyone. Number 4 would be Richie Kirsch. Jack Quaid's character. He's interesting enough. He works well. He has that little bit of a cheat twist at the end where he's like, I wasn't really dating you. I'm dating this other girl, and I'm just here for you. Ha ha ha. But it's a great performance from Jack Quaid, a actor who doesn't normally get to take villain turns, and I think that's what elevates him to the top 4.
Yeah, and he, very cerebral. The brains of the movie. Just such little things in there that upon rewatching again, that like you might have missed the first time. Like in the hospital when Sam wakes up next to Tara and he's there. Oh, I'm just watching the stab movies. I've never seen these before. Or when he takes the inhaler to get them to go to the house and he knows where they have to go. Just really just plotting his way the whole time, getting him to do exactly what he wanted out of his pocket.
Corralled.
Yeah, completely controlled.
Yeah.
And say what you want about Amber having more kills in the movie or being, the more crazy one. You got to give Richie credit for being, a mind that could rival some of these top 4. That was quite interesting. And he got a really brutal death too. We'll give it to Sam for slashing him up real good.
So then we're in the top 3, and I know you and I have discussed this before about who goes where, and they could slide around each other. Number 1, we both agree on. But
yeah, absolutely.
Whether you think Stu Macher or Jill Roberts should be the number 3 or number 2, I think it's open for debate. I know you put Jill higher. I put Stu higher, because I like his performance from Matthew Lillard. But in either case, both of them play fucked up crazy really well.
Yeah, Matthew Lillard, the original crazy, tag team partner, and then, Jill in Scream 4 being the more crazy, controlled leader of the group. Billy had his moments of insanity, and you saw that at the end when he was slashing up his best friend to make a point. But Stu, he was the ultimate wingman. He would follow along with what Billy exactly. He'd even let his friend kill his girlfriend to make a point.
Yeah.
Like, he had no problem with it whatsoever. It was just,
true sociopath.
Peer pressure. That's what I'm gonna tell the cops. That's why I did it. I'm too sensitive.
Okay. I love his so motivation. Good. It's so dumb, but it so works for teenagers, and that's what I like. But in fairness, Jill Roberts had a plan, and she almost got away with it.
Yeah, the one Ghostface, out of all the movies who got the closest to victory
she almost had
Jill.
that brass ring.
She was so close, and we can flip flop Stu and Jill, all day long, and discuss who is who. The only reason I put Jill higher is she's the leader, and she almost got away with it. But you can definitely not take away, the charisma that Stu had, the crazy, the misdirect. You want to suspect him right away in the movie when they're sitting at the fountain talking, but he tries to throw. Yeah. But he just throws, this slight little misdirect, like, I was with Tatum last night. And she's like, that's right. He was with me all night. And like, before or after, they never answer, but they just kind of let it go.
Well, and that's the thing is, up until that Scream, the original Scream, we really hadn't seen multiple killers. I think there might be 1 or 2 of the movies in the genre that you could probably point out, but they're not popular. They don't rise to it the way Scream did or some of the major franchises. So when you go in to Scream the first time you're watching it, you think, okay, we're looking for the killer, not the killers. And for it to, like, with Stu's misdirect and an alibi, you're like, oh, okay, well, it can't be him. And then Billy's in the police station all night. Oh, well, it can't be him. And that's the interesting thing is that Billy's idea, and this is why he's number 1, to have 2 of them work together to always distract from who's the guy doing it, and then to just plot all of this around a motive of revenge that has been hinted at the whole movie, so it's not even a cheat. Billy has the backstory and the expertise.
Yeah, and Billy, he the 2 greatest lines to me in his monologue is like, it's really scary when there's no motivation for the killer. They found out what Hannibal Lecter, like the E people, did they really care about this? Nobody cared. And he's like, well, how about this? Your mother's a whore. Like, oh, okay. So there was some motivation, and maybe the broken child has a point.
I mean, not to victim blame, but at least from his perspective, there was motivation to it.
Yeah. And
which is more
Skeet Ulrich, and Skeet Ulrich too. Like we touched on Stu, we touched on Jill, 2, 3, 3, 2, whatever order you want. Both great. Let's talk about Billy a bit, because I mean, is there a more perfect incarnation of what Ghostface is supposed to be than the original? Because I don't think so.
Skeet Ulrich nails it. He's an actor that you would expected to keep rising because he did such a good performance, and he did a lot of good indie comedies and dramas, and seemed like he was on his way towards award season and gonna be a big actor, and then just kind of didn't.
Yeah, he just kind of did what he wanted to do. I don't know if it was his plan to not do that. I know he was on a couple TV shows for several seasons and whatnot. He made his money, and he's still around, but he never really rose to that level that you thought maybe this guy could. And maybe that was by design. Maybe that's just, choices that he made outside of, Hollywood. I'm not sure. But, give credit where credit's due. He played a masterful performance as the original Mastermind Ghostface. And he's so good. There's no other way to put it.
No, there's no better way to put it. So that is, of course, the thing of now that we've gone through the killers, we have to wonder how can they even create a killer that would be as good as any of the ones we have. They've already wasted the Fake Out 6 prologue that we could have had great, and it's hard to do anything that's as good as Billy. I seem to recall at one point, maybe when we were discussing this off microphone, the thought that like Sam's mom could come back or something was a possibility.
Yeah. I thought that would be, a nice little interesting touch, and then she comes back and maybe she's the killer, or to kind of finish Billy's work because she's still in love with him. But then you brought a really good point of like, maybe she's not the killer, but maybe she's trying to egg Sam on to kind of take up that mantle and maybe
mother-daughter thing, yeah,
and maybe Sam has a bit of a split personality in the sixth movie, and she does end up being the killer. I just think that'd be very interesting to bring back this woman who maybe we've seen in a picture or two in the fifth movie when Tara's walking around the house. I'm sure if you zoom in or enhance or whatnot, you could see it. But we don't know who she is, and she's referenced, in both movies. So I think it would almost be a mistake to not bring this character in for the sixth movie in some kind of role. So we'll see. I think it could be very interesting.
That's a good twist. It nicely mirrors the setup of the previous films where, it is actually tied back into something. Number 3 made it all about the previous 2 movies. Number 7 probably should do the same for its previous 2 movies before we get some sort of a reset movie and then start over again.
And I got high hopes for 7. We're on a bit of a kick here with, sequel trilogies where the second movie is very, kind of high hopes, but not as good. And I think Scream 6 was good, and it had its moments. Was it as good as 5? It wasn't as good as 5 to me, I think, but it wasn't as bad as some of these, second string of sequels have been.
It also wasn't as bad as 2, so...
Yeah, it definitely wasn't. And maybe that's something to be said for, it's 20 years later and the brutality is much more acceptable in movies. I'm not sure. But I think the dominance of the kills now does say something for how good the movie can be. So, I mean, we'll see. But I think it could do some really interesting things. And I'm very hopeful and excited that we can get something that you and I haven't even both thought of. And maybe we're completely surprised.
I'm looking forward to it. And with that, I think we're done talking about the killers for right now, at least until we have more to debate. This has been Not So Live from Asteroid G, not lurking in your house waiting for you to run up the stairs. You should be running out the front door. I'm Mike Finkelstein. With me, of course, was...
Your buddy Mike. I'm just going to go to the video store and get a scary movie. I'll be back in a little bit. I'll be right back.
We will see you next time.